Langford for the win. Yes! Yes!
Steps back. Wow. Three-pointer.
College basketball. This is March Madness.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Flop Warning. Today is our edition of Men's Monday, and I am joined by a great group of panelists alongside me, Hayden Smith and Josh Bodie, with Riley Woodall in the producer seat. Guys, nice little week of college basketball, to say the least. A few different really good matchups that we'll get into, but starting off our first segment, our game that we have first is Duke at Wake Forest. Hayden, you want to take this one? What a game this was, down to the wire.
100%. I mean, this was a great game. It kind of got overshadowed, obviously, by what happened afterwards with the court storm and Filipowski getting injured by a student running on the court. Just a bad situation overall. We'll talk about that here in just a little bit. But I mean, wow, what a game! I mean, it was back and forth the entire time. It just a really good game to watch, and a much needed victory for Wake Forest. I mean, I can't even stress that enough, to be able to knock off a great team like Duke on their home floor. I mean, that in my mind is one of the best games I've seen all season.
Yeah, there definitely are things that Wake could have done later in the season to get themselves into the tournament, but this was about as much as must-win of a game as you can have, and they needed this one. Now they probably will make the tournament. That's huge for college basketball fans in general, because Wake is a good team. They've struggled to win big games this year, but they're a good team. They're fun to watch. Hunter Salas was excellent in this game. 29 points, 11 of 13 shooting.
That's ridiculous.
5 of 6 from 3 as well, which actually wasn't even like close to the best. Well, maybe it was close to the best, but I mean, Justin Edwards, we'll talk about him in a minute, from Kentucky, had an even better day. But Hunter Salas has had an amazing season, and this was a huge win for Wake Forest.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing for Hunter Salas was the coming out party from the Gonzaga transfer. You know, he obviously struggled his first few years. He goes to Wake Forest. He gets the team that he needs. He gets the situation that he needs. And this is like the perfect game for him when Duke travels to Wake Forest, a lot on the line. Hunter Salas comes in and just does his thing, does what he was recruited to do at Gonzaga for. Unfortunately, it didn't work out, but he's thriving at Wake Forest, and that was a big game for him. Moving on, Alabama at Kentucky. A lot of offense.
Was this the NBA?
Yes. I mean, it's an NBA type of score. I believe it was 117 how many points Kentucky scored. Josh, I'll go to you first. I mean, just an offensive barrage for both teams, to say the least.
Yeah, the pace was crazy. The shot making was crazy as well. Kentucky was absolutely incredible in this game. A 20-2 run is what put the game away for them in the first half.
Wow.
Justin Edwards was almost perfect, 10 for 10 shooting, 4 for 4 from 3. He did miss one free throw. I mean, come on, just make all the free throws. You gotta be 100% across the board. 28 points. He was absolutely spectacular. I did see that this was the most amount of points in an SEC game. When you said 117 points since 1996. Honestly, kind of surprised that anyone has put up 117 points in a conference game.
Yeah. Especially that long ago.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that long ago, but still.
I think if I'm remembering correctly, because I was watching almost this entire game, Kentucky hit 100 with 8 minutes left in the game.
Wow.
What is happening? It was absurd.
I mean, that was absolutely unreal, especially knowing the game that was I believe it was going on at the same time between, I think it was Virginia and was it North Carolina?
Yeah, I can't remember if it was the exact same time slot or 2 hours before, but yeah, basically
ridiculous. I mean, the halftime score for Kentucky was more than I believe both teams combined in the first half in that Virginia game. I mean, that's absolutely ridiculous.
It was close, at least, probably.
Exactly. I mean,
Virginia had 8 points in the first 16 minutes.
Goodness gracious.
Hey, when you got to tip your hat to both those teams, I might talk about them a little bit later. I mean, the defense between both those teams is ridiculous, and the offense between Kentucky and Alabama is absolutely ridiculous. You talked about the pace in that game. There was 80 possessions for Kentucky. That's absolutely absurd. And then, like you said, Justin Edwards, an absolute field day there, 28 points on perfect shooting from the field at least, and a 220 offensive rating. I mean, it really, for a basketball fan, maybe not like a college basketball fan, Josh, I have a feeling you probably didn't really enjoy this game.
No, I loved watching.
I feel like you like those like hard-nosed rock fights.
No, let's be real. I don't want to watch games in the 50s. Like a nice 75-point game is perfect. I don't remember what the final was for Duke Wake Forest, but that was like the perfect game for me. I enjoyed watching Alabama Kentucky. I wish, like, the only drawback was that Kentucky pummeled them. I mean, I kept waiting for Alabama to like get it close. I don't remember what they cut it to in the second half, but they went on a little run, and then Justin Edwards made like 6 straight shots, and then there the game goes.
That was huge for Justin Edwards, though, especially because he has struggled at times this season, but that again, like we've said earlier with Hunter Salas, I mean, that was kind of a coming out party for him as well. And I mean, you can't deny the contributions for other guys like Antonio Reeves. He's been absolutely tremendous this season. And this Kentucky team, they just have so much raw talent on that team, like many past Kentucky teams have had. It's just the fact of, can they continue this into the tournament with John Calipari at the head? I mean, it's only time will tell.
Yeah, I'm going to try and keep. Sorry, Owen.
Yeah, go
just one more thing before we stop talking about Kentucky. Obviously, the defense is what has been the killer for them this year. They've been really bad. However, guess what they are on Torvik in defensive efficiency, adjusted defensive efficiency in the last 2 weeks.
There's no way it can be that high.
I got no guess.
9th in the country.
What?
Adjusted defensive efficiency in the last 2 weeks.
Wow. Okay, they're stepping it up.
Shocker.
They're stepping it up.
So that's only a sample size of I think 4 games.
But still.
But if that's something that they can continue and at least be in the top 20 or 30 to close out the rest of the season, starting from 2 weeks ago, that would be substantial and potentially be good enough to get them to a national championship.
I mean, to be fair, especially with the teams that they played Auburn, LSU, obviously that game was a loss for them, and then Alabama. I mean, they're killing it.
Yeah, and Josh, you kind of not necessarily stole, but you had the same idea as me, is that what is the defense going to look like in March? And I think that's the biggest question surrounding that team right now. You know, obviously that stat that you pulled up is pretty great. And if they can continue that, and then I think, yes, the conversation for a national championship is there. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, KenPom still has them 77. You know, that's a little bit of a glaring number for me when I'm looking at that. But if they could continue that momentum on, especially on the defense, and continue to pull up points like that, I mean, that's a dangerous team, no doubt about it. Finally, looking at Houston at Baylor, one of the top players in the country maybe had a little bit of an off day, but Houston still taking the win. Hayden, what do you got?
I mean, what a game, especially in overtime. And, man, if that last shot would have counted for Jamal Shed. I mean, also – beautiful call by Spiro Dennis. I mean, that was absolutely ridiculous. Mm-hmm. And then obviously the shot didn't end up counting, but you really don't get much better than that. Houston able to pull off that victory. And I love Baylor's new arena. I really do. I think the environment is really, really nice there. And obviously it turned out to be a big selling point. I mean, Baylor's been very solid so far this season, but Houston, they continue to show why I believe they're one of the best teams and the top team in the nation at this current point. I mean, they just came out with the AP top 25 poll, and they just leapfrogged back to number 1. Yep. So I think they still have that chance to be able to win the national championship. There's no question about that, because I love how defensive-minded that this team is, and I think that's just going to go a long ways whenever it comes to March.
Yeah, before I talk about how impressive of a win this one's for Houston, quick follow-up to Baylor's arena. I think it's amazing. If only the camera wasn't in a blimp above the stadium.
Yes. I hate those type of camera angles, because you feel like you're watching from the heavens. I mean, you can't even tell what's going on.
I swear it has to be at the top of the arena. It's so bad. And then, like, assemblies is not great.
It's not great, but
it's not good. This literally feels like you're watching from the catwalk. It's crazy. But this was the exact way I thought that Houston could lose in the tournament. Jamal Shed shoots 5 for 17. Typically, their offense just a complete lull when Jamal Shed isn't hitting shots, especially if LJ Cryer isn't. He was okay, but it was really I'm blanking on his name. Emmanuel, what's his last name? Sharp. Emmanuel Sharp was incredible, and like you said, that Jamal Shed shot at the end of the end of regulation would have been insane.
That would have counted.
Would have been insane.
Oh my.
Yeah, Missy had that free throw to take it, but I mean, struggled a little bit from the line and percentage. But yes, I will be the third to confirm the arena is great, but the camera angle, it's just not it. Just not. It needs to be changed.
The reason I think it's so cool is because I don't know what the actual capacity is, but it's very small.
I think it's 7 or so.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's small, so that means like everything's super condensed, and that means it's going to be very, very loud in there. And it's a state-of-the-art arena too. I mean, I love it. I love it. I think more teams should have those arenas like that. I mean, people wonder why Duke is so tough to beat at home every single season. It's because they have a smaller arena with a lot of fans.
Yeah. Well, moving on to our next segment of the podcast, we'll go ahead and go with our flop of the week. It's where we recognize maybe a team or player that maybe underperformed this past week in college basketball. So, Josh, you're first up on our list. You have a team. Go ahead and tell us who you got.
Yeah, it's going to be Arizona for me. I mean, there are cases to be made for Washington State, who beat Arizona, who turned around and then lost to Arizona State. Creighton beats the number 1 team in the country, then loses to St. John's. But I'm gonna go with Arizona for mine, just because it seemed like the way that they had been playing, they had a comfortable lead on that last 1 seed, which would be huge for them. They get to stay out west, which they probably could with the 2 seed anyways. But getting that 1 seed is huge because the 1 seeds are typically the teams that win in the tournament. Now with this loss, not only do they kind of slip back to bringing some other teams into the conversation for that last 1 seed, they only have a half-game lead on the Pac-12 regular season. This has been a Pac-12 that is definitely down this year, potentially only getting 2 bids. So wow. Arizona not winning the Pac-12 regular season would be kind of a huge bummer for them.
I think, I mean, yeah, obviously that loss to Washington State really hurts them going forward, but I still think this team is going to be extremely dangerous come March. And I think they're almost a dark horse for me if we really want to classify them like that, because I mean, again, I don't really think you can bet against a guy like Caleb Love. I mean, the last time he performed out in March, he took a North Carolina team that should not have gone to the Final Four, but did, and went on to losing the national championship.
Yeah, I'm not totally sure what I think about Arizona. I think they're really hot and cold. They can make the Final Four.
If they get hot at the right time, they're going to be be But I believe that they lost to, it was Princeton in the first round last season. So who knows?
Yeah. Hayden, we'll go to you next. Of course, a lot to say about the Pac-12 with Arizona, but you and I both have a Big Ten team. Who do you got for this one?
I've got Michigan State. I mean, what has happened to this team? They came into this season with big aspirations.
Unreal.
I thought at the beginning of the season, this team was going to go all the way to the Final Four, if not the national championship, and be one of the first Big Ten teams to potentially win it since I believe it was 2002. So it's crazy to see how far they've fallen, and they've lost their last 2, both being at the Breslin Center to Iowa and Ohio State. They just lost to an Ohio State team that doesn't even technically have a head coach at this current point in time. And they lost it in an unforgettable way on that last second shot, 60-57. But I mean, wow, they've really, really struggled. They're 9-8 now in Big Ten play. So they're gonna have to still work some magic. I believe they're still probably, I think last time I saw they were like a 7-10 seed in the NCAA tournament. So they've certainly got work to do, but I mean, Tom Izzo is just a mastermind whenever it comes to March. So, I mean, who knows what could happen to this team, but they still got some work to be done.
Yeah, I believe they were ranked number 4.
Yeah.
Number 4 coming into this season.
Ridiculous. Now they're just receiving votes.
Yeah. I mean,
are they even still receiving
votes? I forgot.
This is the beauty of having the AP poll released just before the show. We can analyze it on site. But they are not receiving votes. Is that what you guys said? Wow.
Northwestern is.
Wow. I mean, that just has to go to, like, you have this roster. You have that talented first 5. You come off the bench with another 5 that has a lot of potential with a lot of freshmen and young guys. And that's the roster you want to kind of build, but the execution has just not been there for the Spartans. I'm sticking with the Big Ten. I got kind of more of a game performance because I mean, this team is still doing a really good job. I mean, they're second in the Big Ten. They're going to make the tournament. But Illinois' collapse at the end of the game at Penn State has got to be something that's monitored.
Yeah.
I mean, a 92% chance of winning with just over a minute left, and they give up an easy win against the Penn State team, which is not very good. They're in Illinois is kind of in that 4 seed area still right now. Could be a little iffy, could not. We'll have to see how that turns out. But Illinois, granted, they came back. They got a pretty good win against Iowa. But I think that kind of collapse where you have that game almost sealed and you let it slip away is something that you don't want to see, especially this late in the season. I think that's something that's really important. And especially when you get into Big Ten tournament time, that's something that you're going to have to monitor if you're Brad Underwood.
Yeah. And I mean, that also especially hurts their Big Ten regular season title chances because, I mean, they're basically almost shot at this point because Purdue is still continuing to roll through the Big Ten. But Illinois still is going to have a chance at playing Purdue. I believe it's coming up here soon enough on March 5th, and that is in Champaign. I mean, so Illinois, if they even want a chance at potentially still winning the Big Ten, I think they have to hope Purdue loses one more game in the Big Ten, and then Illinois has to beat them. So, and Illinois has to win out. So, I mean, this Illinois team, they've been really, really good. But I mean, that really showed a lot of really glaring issues in that Penn State loss.
Definitely.
Yeah, Illinois is 3 games back of Purdue. I'm willing to say
that ain't happening.
It's over.
So now that we've rounded out some maybe poor performances in the week, we'll go to shedding light on the good ones, and we'll go to our next segment, Fab of the Week. Josh, I'll go back to you again to start us out. Houston, of course, taking that win at Baylor, huge win for them. What do you got to say about that?
Yeah, went with a team this week. Went with Houston. Purdue and UConn have both lost in the last 8 days. Houston has won 5 straight. They're now number 1 in the AP poll. I don't know if they're necessarily the best team in the country, but they definitely had the best week last week. They beat Iowa State at home. Iowa State had been hot. Second best team in the Big 12. They avenged their first loss of the season and winning on the road at Baylor, beating one of the top teams, I'll say, in the country. I mean, Baylor will probably get a top 6 or a top 4 seed. So, I mean, just huge week for Houston. They've been number 1 on KenPom since December 1st, despite losing 3 games since then. They've now eventually circled their way back to number 1 in the AP poll as well.
Wow. I did not know about that KenPom. Talk about, I mean, a dominant defense especially, but just a dominant team. Hayden, we'll go to you right after. Tennessee, what do you got?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Volunteers. I mean, they haven't played very tough competition as of recent, but they're still churning through these teams. Since their loss to Texas A&M, they have won their next 4 games by an average of 26 points. So they've just been absolutely dominating. I mean, the only glaring one, I mean, they've won the game, but they only beat Missouri at Missouri 72-67, only by 5 points. But beyond that, they've just absolutely started killing some of these SEC teams. And they got a really difficult schedule coming up. I mean, they play Auburn at home, and then they go to Alabama to play the Crimson Tide, go to South Carolina, and then finish out the year playing Kentucky back home. So it's going to be a very difficult stretch to end out the season. But, I mean, they've been my dark horse final team for months, and I'm going to stand by that. I think they've been really, really solid this season. I think they could potentially continue that going.
I think the only thing that stands in the way of Tennessee and potentially raising the banner this year is regular season Rick.
Yeah.
Rick Barnes can't win in the postseason.
Nope.
Yeah, and I reiterate the importance of just Dalton Connect for that team. I mean, he's a monster. I mean, he's definitely, the National Player of the Year candidate is kind of wrapped up with Zach Edey, but he's at least getting the recognition in a conversation with that at the very least.
No question.
But, I mean, Connect's coming out of the transfer portal, just huge for this Tennessee team. I'm really curious to see how they deal with those last 4 games. If they can come away with 2, maybe even 3, I'd say that's a win by a large margin. But yeah, Tennessee definitely team to keep an eye on. I've definitely got my eye on them. But I'm going to go with Kansas, who's 2-0 on the week. Both wins still without Kevin McCullar. I mean, the production has not missed a step, maybe in a few games earlier before this week, but especially this week they've showed out. How about Furphy coming off the bench, getting his start? He stepped up big time. I've even seen him on some draft boards of going in the high first round, early second round, which is very deserving. I mean, he's averaging over double figures in points, and he's climbing his rebound margin as he gets more minutes. I mean, they beat Texas convincingly at home just a few days ago, and they beat Oklahoma away by 10, which an Oklahoma team that was ranked at that time. And I'm just looking at the potential when they get McCullough back, and if they get him back, which I believe they will soon, they could be very, very dangerous leading into the ladder in the final games of the season and into March.
Yeah, no question. I mean, the only nag I have on this Kansas team is just how inconsistent that they've been at times. I mean, especially here down the stretch, and especially in the Big 12. I mean, they're 9-5 so far, 21-6 obviously overall this season. I don't know. I mean, again, Bill Self is an incredible coach, and he's proven to be kind of just like Tom Izzo in March, and just has been able to churn through some of these teams. So I don't know, Josh. What do you think about Kansas?
Well, they've struggled to win on the road this year. That's why it was such a huge win last Saturday against Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
And the other question is just the depth, and can they knock down jump shots? McCullough was hot earlier in the season. They've kind of, as a team, slowed down from three a little bit, but they're going to need to get Furphy and Timberlake rolling in March. But also, can you really count out Bill Self in March? No, you can't. He's probably the best coach in college basketball. I just don't know if this is the type of Kansas team that's going to raise a banner. Yeah. Maybe they make a run to the Final Four. I don't think this team cuts down.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
Well, we'll move on to our next segment, a little bit of a news segment for you at listening across wherever you are. We're going to look at some of the conference title races heading down into the last few games of the season. We have, I believe, 6 conferences to look at right now, and we'll go ahead and kick off with the ACC. Right now it's between 2 teams. Hayden, go ahead and analyze this one for the folks at home.
Yeah, I mean, right now there's a game lead by North Carolina over the Duke Blue Devils. North Carolina's 13-3 in ACC play. Duke 12-4. I believe they play. Yeah, they play again on the last Saturday of the regular season. I mean, that's going to be a game to look out for North Carolina. I mean, to end out the season, they do have a very favorable schedule. Their next 3 games are at home against Miami, NC State, and Notre Dame, some bottom feeders in the ACC. And then, of course, they have to play Duke on the road. So I definitely see them winning out up until that Duke game. What happens there? I mean, also Duke, they have a very favorable schedule to play a terrible Louisville team, a Virginia team that is not a good team on the offensive end of things, and then NC State on the road before they play North Carolina. So, I mean, all eyes are going to be that game on that last Saturday before everything's wrapped up, before the tournament starts.
Is there a chance that Filipowski is out for 1 or 2 of those games? I mean, it was hard to tell, because we'll get into that later, but that's something
I think he's okay.
I think he's okay too. I just didn't look at I looked at the collision, and it didn't look good on his arm.
I mean,
we'll have to see.
If they really want to sit him, they can, and they'll still win these games. Especially, you want to sit him against Louisville, they could play blindfolded and still win that game. So I'm sorry, that's just how bad Louisville is right now. Kenny Payne's on his way out.
Moving on to the Big 12, we got a really, really nice kind of race here for the last few games. We got a 5-team kind of bid for that conference title. Josh, I'll go to you. What do you see? Who do you like in these final weeks and games?
Yeah, when I was writing these notes down earlier last week, it was a 5-team race. Now it's probably down to about just 3 teams. Houston's got a full game lead on Iowa State, 2-game lead on Kansas, and Houston and Kansas don't play again. It looks like Houston kind of has a stranglehold on this race right now. The only other team that I think can come back with only 4 to play is probably Iowa State. But, I mean, Houston obviously been great all season, and they have a relatively easy schedule down the stretch. I think Houston's probably going to come away with this one, but I think worst case for them is they share the title with Iowa State.
Yeah, I mean, for right now, it looks like Houston definitely has that one locked up. I would be curious to see if they maybe drop a game, if Shed continues to maybe stay cold a little bit and they still have some struggles on the offensive end. Obviously, the defense is pretty good, But Iowa State kind of hanging in there. But I would go ahead and say Houston's got this one locked up.
I gotta say, Josh, we had this conversation not too long ago. Is Big 12 still the best conference right now?
Yeah, they're the best conference. I don't know if they're going to fare the best in March Madness.
I don't think
but
so
across
either.
the board, they are the best
Yeah.
conference in college basketball.
I mean, there's a very obviously March is completely different than the regular season. Who knows what can happen? I don't. If there's any other team I think is better, for me it's between the Big East and the SEC.
Yeah, it's whether or not the SEC can.
I think they can perform in March a little bit better, in my opinion.
Yeah, they're very hot and cold right now, though.
Yeah.
Like the teams are struggling to win like away from home and in big games.
Mm-hmm.
So it's whether or not they can. They have a lot of teams in the pool, just like the Big 12 that are Final Four contenders. It's whether or not they can, I don't know, knock off the Big 12
Yeah.
in March Madness.
I would say I would favor SEC just a little bit over the Big 12, just because you have the teams like Alabama, Kentucky, Auburn, stuff like that. But I mean, I know you had some doubts about Houston maybe contending for the national championship. Right now I'm looking at Houston because I think the defense is just really good. I think they can produce on the offensive end if Shed can be consistent. But I favor the SEC as a conference, but I think I have Houston right now as my early kind of national contenders. Obviously, there's plenty of games left, a lot of conference games to discuss, but we'll move on to another conference, which is pretty much packed for the race. The Mountain West has like 6 teams. Is that still the case? Can you guys comment on that?
Just about. I mean, Utah State, Boise State, they're both tied at 10-4, and then right behind them, San Diego State at 10-5. I don't know. I mean, everybody has like 4 games left except for San Diego State. So this one's definitely going to come down to the wire. And I mean, the Mountain West could probably be probably a 3-bid league, maybe a 4-bid league.
They're looking at six bids right now.
Wow. Okay, that's incredible. I mean, yeah, the Mountain West, they're sleeping giants right now.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of Colorado State. Couldn't really tell you why. I think it was David Roddy had that nice little run with that team. But 6 bids, I did not expect that. But that's, I mean, it's deserving though.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they all have pretty good records. I mean, San Diego State obviously had that run last year, but that's really good to hear. It's really good to hear that they have 6 bids. Good for them.
They were looking safely 6 bids until New Mexico lost at home to Air Force on Saturday, which was a bad loss.
Yikes.
Now New Mexico might be looking at first 4-ish right now, but as long as the Mountain West doesn't take any like really bad losses throughout the rest of the year, they should be able to get 6 teams. Maybe they slip to 5, but it looks like Utah State's probably going to end up winning the regular season title. They already beat Boise State twice, who they're tied with up at top, and they don't have as tough of a schedule as some of the other teams.
Look at good old Rich Pitino.
Good for him. Now we move on to the Pac-12. Arizona right now has it half a game on Washington State, but they also have 3 road games remaining. Do you see any shifts, or is Arizona not necessarily sitting comfortably, but they have the momentum to take this one home?
I think they'll be okay. The 3 road games is a little bit concerning, especially the one against Arizona State, just because, I don't know, rivalry game. Arizona State did just beat Washington State, so at least they have like some fight in them. And then the other ones against UCLA and USC, they're both bad.
And Arizona State's receiving votes.
They're receiving 17 votes in the AP poll. It has to be a typo. I don't understand how that's possible. But, yeah, I think Arizona will be fine. Got a half-game lead. Worst case scenario, they split it. I think they should be able to win it outright. I think they go undefeated rest of the regular season.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think I kind of agree with you, Josh. Arizona definitely, the 3 road games, Arizona State kind of a little bit nervous game, possibly rivalry, and Arizona State for some reason is receiving AP poll votes, which we think is a typo. We won't get any official comment on that, unfortunately.
They're 14-14.
Yeah, that can't be right.
There's no way.
That
There's
can't
no
be
way. If they're receiving votes, the Indiana Hoosiers need to be receiving votes.
Indiana Hoosiers. Oh, don't we love them? Well, the last conference we'll look at is the SEC. We kind of mentioned it earlier, really competitive conference, a lot of talent. And Hayden, who do you think is going to come out on top?
Man,
Maybe
I
it's a tie.
I don't know. This is really, really competitive right now. I mean, Tennessee has I think it's a half game lead right now over Alabama. They're 13-5. Oh, it's tied? Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It is tied. Tennessee's 13-5. Alabama's 14-4. I don't know. I again, maybe I'm biased right now. I'm going to say Tennessee might be able to win out the SEC, but I mean, again, looking at the rest of their schedule, they just have a gauntlet, and I don't know. This one's really going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
I think Tennessee takes it. I mean,
Wow.
they have the opportunities against the big teams to. I mean, I think they're going to play well against. Let's see, who is it? At home against Auburn, at home against Kentucky. I think they win both of those games. And if they split Alabama and South Carolina, as long as Alabama doesn't win out, I think Tennessee's got it. They have. I mean, if they knock off those teams, they're gonna build a lead in the standings.
Yeah.
Getting those head-to-head wins, obviously. I mean, oversimplifying how standings work, but I think Tennessee comes away with at least a share, if not outright.
I see that.
title.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, I would say that's the one that I'm keeping an eye on, just with how close it is and how there's a lot of opportunities for some of those lower teams with South Carolina, Auburn, Kentucky. I mean, we never know. It's the beauty of March. It's the beauty of college basketball when it gets there. There's a lot of things that can happen, and we'll have to see. But I think I would agree with you, Hayden. Tennessee has that kind of edge. I think Alabama has the greatest chance to maybe either split it or take it from them. Moving on to our fifth segment of the day and of the podcast, we'll go ahead with our mid-major spotlight. Not a spotlight. It's not a spotlight.
Close enough.
My words.
Close enough.
Mid-major spotlight. It is a Monday. It's a Monday, but it's beautiful outside. I should be chilling out. But anyways, mid-major spotlight. Each person brings a team or a player from a mid-major team to get some recognition on our podcast. Josh, you are first up. Who do you have?
Yeah, shout out to the South Florida Bulls. They have won 13 straight games after they beat SMU on Sunday, which they were home underdogs. They'd won 12 straight games. I mean, the computer. I'm tangenting already, but the computers don't love
underdogs.
The computers don't love South Florida. They've won 13 straight games. They were home underdogs against SMU and won by 11. They're 14-1 in the American Conference. They've already clinched a share of the American Conference title. I mean, Coach Amir Abdur-Rahim has done an incredible job in South Florida, and I think basically everyone in the national media has been making sure to give him a shout-out. He was at Kennesaw State last year, brought them to the tournament. And the bummer here is that it's hard to tell if South Florida's on the bubble because in bracketologies right now, they're receiving the auto bid in the American, so they're sitting at like a 12 or 11 seed. So we don't get to see them and like where bracketologists have them in like the first four in or last four in, first four out. They're 84th in the net, which is really low.
Yeah.
They haven't played a quad one game this season because FAU's been losing, even though they beat FAU at home. They're 5-3 in quadrant 2, but they have 2 quad 4 losses. So if they end up losing in the American Conference tournament, I think it has to be in the championship game.
Yeah.
And they got to get lucky and play SMU in the semis probably and try and pick up a quad 1 win there if SMU can stay in the top 50 in the net. It's going to be so unfortunate for South Florida if they continue winning, losing the American Conference tournament and get left off, even though they go 17-1 in conference play.
There's a lot of talent, honestly, in the American. I mean, between South Florida, FAU, and I'll throw Memphis in there as well. I mean, those are 3 teams that have been streaky at times this season. So that just, again, that's just the beauty of the NCAA tournament. Of course, there's been a lot of discussion about potentially expanding it, which we will not touch on that. Actually, I believe we will touch on that here.
I got it.
Just a little bit. But that's the beauty of that. You're going to have a lot of talented teams, but I mean, they just haven't really played a lot of great top tier quad 1 talent, and that's exactly why they're not going to get in.
Yeah, that's going to definitely hurt their resume come tournament time and come that bid time. Hayden, we'll go right back to you. Who do you have?
I'm going to go with St. Mary's. I mean, they've just been absolutely dominant so far in the WCC. They're on a 15-game winning streak and have yet to lose a game. I mean, they beat Gonzaga on the road and by 2 points, and then all they really got to do is take care of business against Pepperdine and then take care of business against Gonzaga, and they're WCC champions. I mean, they've been absolutely dominant so far this season. They're one of the top defensive teams in the country, 17th in adjusted defensive efficiency. They're third in 2-point percentage. They're the 16th tallest team in the nation. I mean, they like to slow the game down. I mean, they only average about 62 possessions per game, which is very, very low. So I don't really know how well that's going to work for them in tournament play, because obviously it's completely different in March and teams are going to try and speed them up. And St. Mary's, I don't know. It'll be really interesting to see how that works for them.
That's usually an issue when Big Ten teams get into this tournament.
Yes.
The game is so slow, and then you come away with a game against last year. Last year it was Indiana against Miami that you could really see Miami just ran them out of the court. Yep. And that's one of those examples where you have to prepare for that. Even if you want to win your conference games and you're trying to get a bid to the tournament, you may have to adjust. And that's obviously a big sacrifice to make this late in the season, but we'll have to see how that one plays out. I'll go ahead and give you my mid-major spotlight. We got a really nice race here in the Ivy League Conference right now, and I got Princeton taking it up. It's Yale still listed as the automatic qualifier in bracketology, but the Princeton Tigers are ready to make another historic run and beat a top seed like Arizona again. They're riding a 6-game win streak. They're 20-3 overall on the year. Of course, like I said, trying to make another great run to a tournament bid last season, and when they made the Sweet 16. 3 players average double figures. They like to score a lot on the offensive end. Xavier Lee is averaging 18.2 points per game. It's a really tight race in the Ivy League Conference. It's a really exciting conference. It's one that's obviously not talked about a lot, but I'm excited to see how the Princeton Tigers take that one for the final games of these last 2 weeks. Now, it's our favorite segment. It's probably your guys' favorite segment. It's the shot clock. It's the final one of the podcast where we give ourselves 30 seconds to talk about whatever we would like and whatever kind of topic we would like to comment on. We've got Josh pulling up our timer right now. He's going to go ahead and do it himself. Josh, would you like to go first? I'll offer it up to Hayden as well.
Josh, you want to go?
Yeah, the rock's in my hands. So
All right, go ahead, Josh.
All right, we're going to talk about the court storms. Obviously, player safety is number one. Things like Kyle Filipowski at Wake, they happen, but they don't really happen that frequently. It doesn't seem like this is happening every season. It's like an every other season type of thing. I mean, it's college basketball. There are college students in the student section. It's what makes the game so great. I mean, imagine the Watt shot without a court storm after it. You can't. There's countless other great college basketball shots that are followed by a court storm. Figure out a way to make it safer and make it on the school if something happens.
29 seconds. Wow,
that was
very
impressive. Great offensive possession for Josh Bodie. But going off of that, it just I definitely agree with you, and I think I feel like they have to stay at some capacity. I just don't know how you do it. It would feel weird if they went handshake. They did all their things, and everything was normal. They brought the players out into the tunnel, and then they get to storm the court. I feel like that loses a little bit. I feel like that would be the best way to do it if you were trying to protect the players and coaches of the opposing team. But I don't know. It's really hard. It would be easier just to keep it, and whatever happens. But obviously, it probably won't stay that way. But Hayden, do you have any comments on that one?
I mean, yeah, I completely agree. But I mean, with some of these players, I mean, Filipowski just literally was just kind of walking off the court. Like, they're coming. Get off the court.
Right.
Because Purdue is probably the best at being able to get off of the court really quickly whenever the students are coming out, because it happens all the time. I mean, you see them whenever court storms happen, they get off the court immediately. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're coming, get off the court, so you don't have moments like this. I mean, in all honesty, it's almost like he was searching to try and get hit or whatever. Yeah. I don't know. I want court storms to stay. Some analysts that think they're very, very smart do not think they should. and are trying to provide different solutions to it. And it has to stay. It has to.
It takes a lot out of just the game and in general. Like, there's so much fun that goes on with court storming, but I mean, it's just a hard situation right now. Obviously, what happened to Filipowski is something that you don't want to see in court storming, but could it have been avoidable? That has to be the discussion. Hayden, we'll go with you. I'll go ahead and round it out. I will take it the last, but I'll go ahead and give it to you.
Well,
your shot clock.
I don't have anything written down, but I know exactly what I'm going to talk about.
Josh, you got the clock.
I got the timer.
3, 2, 1. Let's go.
Okay, I'm going to talk about the divide in Indiana basketball right now. It's almost a civil war going on with the Hoosiers. Everybody's just mad about something 24/7. I understand it has been a very, very, very difficult season for the Hoosiers. Kind of a rebuild year after Trace Jackson Davis has since graduated and gone away. But, I mean, especially the booing in Assembly Hall whenever your team misses a free throw, that's not going to help things. The divide on social media has been absolutely ridiculous.
That was great. And then I think I kind of have to agree with you. I mean, you didn't really have much to take, but the thing that I guess upsets me, I'm a Bloomington native. Mm-hmm. I've grown up around the Hoosiers. I think it's a loyalty thing for me. And if you're going to spend your time going to a game knowing that it could end badly with a prior record, and then take time out of your experience of just watching a basketball game to boo your, home team.
Exactly.
Is that really helping anything? Exactly.
And
people chanting "Fire Woodson" like our producer Riley just chanted.
It's not going to help.
It's not helping. Yeah. It's
people also need to realize it's not the 1980s anymore.
This is true.
Indiana isn't that team. They should be, and they have all the assets to be able to be that kind of a team again, but they just haven't been able to prove it. So,
Well, I'll go ahead and round out our episode as we are crunching on time. Hopefully, my last one, if you guys caught it, was on the Women's Wednesday, and I went about 53 seconds.
Oh,
so I'm excited. I'm hopeful that I can redeem
St. Mary's
myself.
Over here.
We're
You're
ready.
Taking your time.
I'm ready.
3, 2, 1.
All right, so I am worried about the possible idea of expanding the NCAA tournament. Obviously, Jay Billis, he had it right, but I won't go that hard as he did on national media. But you have to keep the tournament competitive and prestigious by these teams that work so hard to get there. The 68 team format, I think, is great. I don't think anything needs to change to it. I feel like for teams that you play your entire season to gain this opportunity. And I really just think if they expand it, it's going to take a lot away from those teams.
At the buzzer.
That was close.
Hey, we'll take it. You got the shot off in the air as it was going down.
Exactly.
No, I agree with you. It is, in my mind, perfection right now. Mm-hmm. 68 has just been I haven't seen anything wrong with it, and I haven't seen anything that would cause me to change my mind. But at the same time, I wouldn't say no to another weekend of more basketball to watch, but I don't know. I don't know what they would do, and I don't really know how they would change it.
It's different from like the college football playoff where you knew it was like, okay, you had to change. Yes. You had to give an opportunity to some other teams. But this is a whole nother story. And discussions will continue to be made, and we may even have it as a segment on our later podcast episode. So that's going to round it out for Flap Warning on today's Monday's edition. Thank you so much for Hayden Smith and Josh Bodie, my analysts, joining me today, and Riley Woodall behind the computer joining us as a producer. Folks, we'll see you next time.